Hey, everyone.
Hey, Amy.
Good, it worked. I was like, oh.
For a quick second, and then I think you realized you're on mute.
Yes. I had to get my headset working. Hi, Daniel, Chico, Martha.
Hi.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
Hi.
Oh,
Trying to
forever.
set up my headphones. So I remove my
Nice.
speakerphone.
Okay.
I'm gonna play around with the lighting because it looks like I'm in a cave or something.
Yes. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, really well. Thank you. We've got quite a crowd tonight.
Our little pre-Friday party.
Yes, pre-fight. Yes, Friday Eve.
Yeah, Taisha and Sarah are the only ones we're not expecting.
Right. Thank you for reminding us on that. And then also, it's okay if we slow our roll a little bit here in the beginning. I think Chief Maris has a conflict until 6:44. So
Okay.
I'm wondering if it makes sense because I don't know if the panel's officially met, Flo and that crew.
We could just bump that to the top. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's just do that really quickly just to give, and Stephen might have updated information. Deputy Chief Redfern, my understanding is Chief Harold is not able to come until like 6:44.
Nope. She got it worked out, so she should be on momentarily.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Scratch that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, we're a whole thing. Oh, I do have an update before we get in for panelists. Just a quick thing Ariel and I talked with, well, Joey, before Joey left, just making sure in our meetings when we can to make sure we have our cameras on, but especially when we take votes, to make sure that when we cast a vote, we have our camera on so it's clear that we're actually the one casting the vote and our intention is recorded for the record. Just a heads up on that. Just to keep us above board transparency wise on everything we do. So I just wanted to get that out before we started the meeting. And Victor, are you up for monitoring our Q&A again tonight? Awesome sauce. And I know Ariel's going to take the first half of the meeting. She's texting me right now. Oh, hopefully she's okay. There we go. Yeah, she should be here any second.
Gianna, I know you're the host. Daniel, maybe you could help me here. Do one of you need to be made as a co-host as well? Like,
yeah,
what's your protocol?
If you can make me and when Ariel gets here, make us both co-hosts of the meeting.
You got it.
Thank you.
And is committee co-chairs, are any of you presenting tonight? Should we make you a co-host as well? Martha, Victor, or Hadassah? Cool. Not that there was an expectation. I just wanted to check though.
No, I thought it was be loaded for the reimagining policing plan, so I didn't attempt.
And we didn't meet last week.
No worries. No worries. And I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's quorum, Ariel. If you're ready to launch us off.
Amazing. Second. Okay. Sorry, let me just make sure I am oriented. Okay, perfect. And then, sorry, I'll get Bogey. Bogey also is a frequent, for those of the new people, my dog Bogey is a frequent member of our meetings. He will be popping up. Try to keep him quiet as best as we can. Bogues, come on, come meet everyone. Victor is going to be in charge of our Q&A. And so any questions that members of the public have or press, direct to the chat, and Victor will be fielding those throughout the meeting so the rest of the panel can be focused. We thank Victor for that. And then for panelists, if you have any chat communications, we just remind you to keep those one-on-one rather than generally in the chat, just for ease sake. Anything that you have that you need to be brought up, you can also ping one of the co-chairs so that we can do it. And then, Gianna, are you taking minutes for us this evening just to confirm, or is there?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, wonderful. So I see that recording's going, so I'm going to start with the reading of our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribes, the traditional custodians of the land on which the Police Oversight Panel and Boulder Police Department operate, and pay our respects to their elders past and present. Welcome everyone to the October 2022 meeting of the Police Oversight Panel. We are in a time of transition, just like the fall. As leaves are turning, we are also changing. So as you all know, Joey has left and gone to LA. We wish him well there, and our interim monitors are in place now. And we are in the midst as well of our recruitment and selection committee. And so there's a lot going on for some of our panelists who are sitting in on that. So I wanted to say a big thank you. I know it's been a heavy lift and things are a little bit wonky. And so we really appreciate it. I'm going to read through our agenda right now. So we are going to approve the minutes from the September meeting. Then the Boulder Police Department will be presenting the Reimagined Policing Plan to us, which all of us have gotten time to review, hopefully throughout this week. And we are going to share some feedback and have some dialogue there. We will give a status update on member application, the selection process. Any committees can share kind of quick updates for now. I have a feeling that will go pretty shortly. We will be doing, the interim monitor, Flo, will be introducing herself and sharing a brief report as well. Then we will be selecting our cases as well as public comment. Daniel, have I missed anything?
The only thing is after the update on the application selection process, we have an update for transitioning to the new co-chairs. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you for adding that in. Great. So with that, let's start with approval of minutes so we can hand it over to the police department. So has everyone gotten a chance to review September minutes? Okay, let's just do a show of hands. You can vote by Zoom. That would probably be easiest. Okay, great. Let's see, panelists, Daniel, approval of minutes, Martha, Victor, and Chico, do you approve the September minutes as they stand? Great, myself as well. Okay, Gianna, can you also please just note too, I forgot to add that Taisha and Sarah are not present for this meeting too, just so we have that.
Absolutely.
Perfect. And with that, I will hand it over to the police department. Thanks so much.
Chief, did you want me to just start?
I can, but good evening, everybody. Mayor Harold, Police Chief, and I'll let Steve introduce himself so everybody's familiar with Steve.
Good evening, everybody. I think I've met most of you, or at least some of you virtually. My name is Steve Redfern. I'm the Deputy Police Chief here.
Good evening, Police Oversight Panel. I'm glad to be here. My name is Wendy Schwartz. I am the Human Services Policy Manager in our city's Department of Housing and Human Services. But tonight I'm speaking to you as the project manager for the Police Department Master Plan project, otherwise known as Reimagine Policing. And I'm just going to pause here and have our Assistant City Manager introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Pam Davis. I use she, her pronouns. As Wendy said, I'm Assistant City Manager and also one of the executive sponsors for the Reimagining Policing Plan. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Pam. And then I'll have Dr. Sattler introduce herself. We have a consultant working with us on this project, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the presentation, but we can just have Dr. Sattler briefly introduce herself now.
Hi, my name's Patricia Sattler. Most people just call me Trish. And you can forgo the formality of calling me doctor. I appreciate it, but it's not necessary. I'm a senior research associate at the National Policing Institute and the co-principal investigator on this evaluation of the draft plan for Boulder.
Thanks, Trish. And I'll just acknowledge, well, Amy's on the call tonight, that Amy Kane has also been part of our core team working with us on the Reimagine Policing project. So with that, then I think I'm going to, I'll share my screen to get the brief presentation we have up.
Wendy, while you're doing that, I'm going to just further my presence here. So one of the other reasons that I'm here is as Joey's supervisor, the supervisor for the independent monitor. I'm going to be going along with all of you through the next few months just to help really support the police oversight panel, the work that you're all doing, making sure our colleagues from the Office of Independent Review have what they need. So I'm just here to help be part of the glue as we move forward through this process. And for those of you who are on the recruitment panel for the new panelists, I'm going to be helping organizing some of that work as well. So reach out to me whenever you have any questions or concerns, and I'll be emailing you, as you probably have already noticed. Thanks so much.
Okay, so we've had some tricky issues with presenting, or I've had some tricky issues rather with presenting in Zoom. So folks, tell me what you're seeing on the screen share right now.
PowerPoint, Wendy.
Okay, it's just the big slide. We're set?
Yes.
Okay, so now let's see if it works to advance. Okay, so Chief, are you ready to dive in here?
I am. First of all, I'm sorry that you had to read 70 pages of the police master plan and then have to watch a PowerPoint. And I'm going to try to make this as seamless and painless for you as humanly possible. But I do want to just give a little bit of background on why I am in policing and how I do see policing very differently than most police executives across the country. I started my career in psychology and social work, and for the better part of my 20s, I investigated sex assaults and child abuse in vulnerable populations, mostly in the state of Kentucky and the city of Cincinnati. And I think my background is different from a lot of police executives, But I was in grad school, finishing up an MSW, Master of Social Work, when I took a class on policing in grad school. And I came across these Pillion principles, and Sir Robert Peel, but these principles are known as Pillion principles, changed the trajectory of my life, because the message from Sir Robert Peel from the United Kingdom was very powerful. And unfortunately, his desire and commitment to policing in the 1850s is everything that I want to do. And for those of you who have known, Sir Robert Peel was the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, very progressive for his time, and he's not to be confused with his father, who was not very progressive for his time. But Sir Robert Peel was the Prime Minister during a ton of civil strife and civil unrest in the United Kingdom. And he saw a lot of military presence during times of civil unrest, and he saw a lot of bloodshed during this time. And he really began formulating his philosophies of having a civilian police force that would be part of the community and not be a military invading army, so to speak. And so this is the foundation of everything I believe in. And I am so passionate about his principles because really, when you read them, you cannot believe that they were written in the 1850s. I'm not going to read all of these on word for word, but I do want to paraphrase this because I think they are so powerful, especially when we're talking about reimagining policing. So here are some of the foundations of the Pillion principles. The police should focus on preventing harm and protecting the vulnerable. We want to avoid the need to respond to crime and the need to punish people using the justice system. To that, we must perform in ways that secure and maintain public respect. People must believe in and want to follow the rule of law. They must believe laws keep people safe. We never want to use force when it is available. Doing so reduces public cooperation. We must be servants to all segments of the population and willing to sacrifice ourselves to preserve the life of others. Next slide, Wendy. We should never use force when we have other means to achieve public safety objectives. Police officers are members of the public. They simply devote themselves to ensuring safety. We only exist to stop harm, never to avenge or punish people. The rest of the systems has this power. And finally, we should be judged by our ability to prevent crime, not by the number of calls we respond to and arrests we make. So these principles to me mean everything. I'm so passionate about this, but this is what policing has to strive for. And so whenever I speak about policing, you can know this is where I'm constantly trying to get to, are these 9 Pillion principles. Next slide. So let's look where we've been in Boulder and across the country in policing. Let's explore some of the outdated models that have the following attributes. So if you look at policing across the country, one of the things that really drive me insane is that we have become, through technology, very reactive in nature, over-reliance on traditional criminal justice systems. We respond randomly to calls for service, back and forth to the same people, places, and victims over and over and over again. This remains steady, not only in Boulder, but across the country. We fail to take into account other failures of social service systems that contribute to crime. And we place disproportionate number of community members of color into systems that does not serve them well at all. Next slide, Wendy. So now let's consider where we should go. Reimagining policing envisions a new future, one that will take time, but is both achievable and replicable. The vision has the following attributes. I have always said, and this has been the cornerstone of my career, that policing needs to be prevention focused. We need to look at data systems and practices that have been proven. And I'm a big believer in using only evidence-based strategies to reduce crime and disorder. We need to be more inclusive and less biased. We need to emphasize collaboration and problem solving. We need to be in multiple communities and convince communities that there's lasting benefits to partner with the police department. We have to do better creating trust and relationships. We have to keep people, when possible, out of the criminal justice system. Next slide, please. So I am not saying that sometimes police officers have to make arrests. And I think we can all agree that when violence occurs between individuals, that police are definitely needed. You can think about active shooters, you can think about sexual assaults, you can think about domestic violence, repeat offenders in the system. There is a role that sometimes the criminal justice system plays a part. But I believe wholeheartedly that police departments, communities, and other city departments can prevent opportunities for crime occurring in the first place. And that is meaningful police reform. Not often talked about when we're talking about police reform, but I have seen it, I have been a part of it, and I think that's where the future of policing lies. Next slide, Wendy. So a shared vision that transforms policing to the future is we have to meet modern day and emerging expectations of our communities. We need to bring more justice and equity to a problematic system. We have to create positive change in communities most in need. And in that, we must reduce harm to our most vulnerable populations. And I think we can all agree right now, the harm that is being committed across this country, in large part, is to our most vulnerable populations. Next slide. And this is something, again, is the cornerstone of the Reimagining Policing Master Plan. And it really is how crime science addresses social inequities. So some of the crime science principles is crime is concentrated. It's concentrated in people, places, and victims. We know this. So a small number of vulnerable community members and places are more likely to experience crime victimization. The cost of victimization, physical, economic, and emotional, further perpetuate social inequities, particularly when repeat victimization occurs. Prevention must be the priority in policing. Repeat crime patterns are identified and prevention becomes officers' primary mission, not simply reacting to crime after it occurs. Prevention reduces social inequities perpetuated when costs of crime are disproportionately borne by repeat victims. And then the other big concept that I am really pushing in Boulder is this concept of holistic governance, which again comes from the United Kingdom as well. But prevention requires analysis of repeat crime problems and local leaders' commitment to direct resources toward these experiencing harm. Disrupting predictable crime patterns reduces further social inequities caused by victimization and the need for continuous justice system intervention, including police response to calls for service and arrest. And I will offer that other city departments and other alternative responses to crime and disorder many times have more impact than police officers do. So if you think about police chiefs becoming part of a holistic city strategy about crime and disorder, I think that we get closer to meaningful police reform. Other city departments, and I've said this time and time again, have meaningful impact on crime and disorder by blocking opportunities for crime to happen in the first place. We know this. These are proven, these are evidence-based strategies. And any police chief that is not engaged with other city departments and other social service agencies and other types of alternative responses are missing the ball completely. And this is the direction that we have to go in. So when you see me presenting on holistic governance, this is a big part of me reimagining policing. Next slide, please, Wendy. I think that one's yours, Wendy.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
So now that the chief has talked about really the vision behind the plan, in a few slides, we'll transition to talking about some of the draft value statements that you read in the plan and the focus areas of the plan. But first, I'll just start by talking about how we got to that draft plan. And how we've gotten there is we've been working on this project for a while. We've had 3 public engagement windows thus far. And the feedback we got in those windows were used to develop the draft public safety value statements that are included in the plan, as well as the focus areas. And so now we're at the point of having a draft plan that's been released publicly. And in our next window, we're going to be looking for feedback on what we've released to the public, so that we know how well that plan is meeting the ideas that people have about their police department, and how they want it to address their concerns and their values in the city. And so we refer to that as window 4. And our consultant, National Policing Institute, which Trish and her team are leading that effort. They are managing the public engagement that's going to take place during that upcoming window. And there's 2 kind of major branches, if you will, of that engagement. And one of them is a community survey that's going to be offered in English and Spanish. And that there's going to be a representative, statistically representative sample survey from the city. And also that same survey will be available for anybody in the community to take it if they wish. And then we have another branch, which is what we've been calling alternative engagement. And what the feedback that the city has heard in recent times is that a survey, that's a pretty traditional city method of getting feedback, that works great for some of our residents, but maybe not so great for others. And so we wanted to make sure we offered other opportunities and some opportunities to kind of get some deeper or more nuanced qualitative feedback. So there's going to be focus groups and interviews. And Trish and the National Policing Institute team have linked up with some different community leaders representing different groups, different segments of our population, and with really an emphasis on groups that may have historically been disproportionately impacted by policing practices, or really felt like city planning processes like this might not have been very accessible to them. And so on this slide, on the right-hand side, we have some bullets representing kind of some of the types of community segments that we're emphasizing through that process for that alternative engagement. And after we finish the presentation, then Dr. Sattler or Trish can answer any additional questions you might have about that. So I won't go through all of the community values statements that are listed on the slide here because we're going to give examples of those in the upcoming slides. But these are what you read in the plan, and they're the underpinning draft value statements that were developed from community input. And then there's also 6 focus areas that are represented on this slide. And in the plan, we've grouped strategies and linked them to one or more of these focus areas. So in a minute, for the next slide, I'll turn it back over to the chief, and she'll give some examples of the types of strategies that are in the plan and how they relate to those community value statements. We do have 13 strategies in the plan, and many of those strategies have multiple tactics underneath them, which is often a bit much for people in a PowerPoint presentation. So for this presentation, we're going to focus on examples, but when we finish, happy to talk about anything in any part of the plan. And so with that, I'll turn it over to the chief to start on the first value statement example.
Thanks, Wendy. So we are all free to enjoy public and private spaces without fear of harm. And I think this is so important to the community to be able to trust that the police department and other city departments are engaged in evidence-based strategies that are effective, equitable, and efficient. And so one of the ways that we are doing this, we have adopted the stratified policing model, which is an accountability and transparency model that puts heavy emphasis on community collaboration to solve crime problems. And so this is up and running. It's in its infancy stages right now, but everybody from the community is welcome. We have started getting community members in both of our tactical and strategic meetings. And I want the community to feel safe, that they can come and understand how the police department is working in collaboration with the community and other city departments to impact crime and disorder. So that is a heavy lift to get off the ground because, again, police officers are trained historically just to react to crime and react to calls for service. They do normally not join the police department to prevent crime. And so this is a huge monumental shift for policing to get them to think more about prevention versus reacting. I think we've talked about this at length. We brought on the ICAT model. It's also known as the critical decision-making model. But this is a radical departure on how we train officers on use of force. We have gotten away from the use of force continuum, and we are now in this circular paradigm strategy that really puts the value of all life in the middle of the model, which dramatically changes tactics and strategies police officers use when they encounter somebody that is resisting or in a behavioral health crisis or really is not cooperative. So this radically changes the way police officers look and feel about uses of force. And also, I will say, unfortunately, the United Kingdom is very progressive on policing. This is an idea out of Scotland. And so I've adopted this strategy as well. Preliminarily, I can tell you, since we have been engaged in it, our use of force numbers have significantly gone down, and we are studying this and we're going to further evaluate this. So that is good news. The other way that we can discuss policing in communities and ensure that we're engaged in evidence-based practices is that we are trying to get CALEA accredited, which is just a accreditation that police departments go through. But these are third-party assessors that come in and review the police department top to bottom policies, procedures, guidelines, and make sure that they do meet best practices. Next slide, Wendy. So the next value statement is laws are enforced equitably. Just one example of what we're doing is that we are having a third-party research firm come in, review our stop and arrest data and our traffic stop data, consensual and non-consensual stops as well. My vision in short term is to have this all located on a community dashboard that has explanations and descriptions on force and traffic stops and includes any disparities that we have. Next slide. The next value statement is police respond professionally and respectfully when we need them, but we need alternative and creative resources to address problems not suited to policing. So Boulder is way ahead of the curve on alternative responses. There is a ton of alternative responses that already exist in the Boulder Police Department: auto accident reconstructionist, code enforcement, animal control, just to name a few. Also, we have, I think, one of the best hot teams in the country that really work hard on assisting our unhoused population into housing. We also have, I think, one of the finest crisis intervention response teams in the country as well, and that's led by Wendy. And we are looking to develop a paramedic and a clinician response similar to what Denver has in STAR. So this will all be happening probably in 2023, if Wendy thinks that's on target. Wendy, are you thinking that's on target? It's on target. All right. Next slide, Wendy. So we demonstrate we are a compassionate community that supports the basic needs and rights to be free from crime for all community members. Just one example, I have been working really hard to ensure that we are recruiting from diverse neighborhoods in many ways. And this is so important to me, to make sure that we have people with diverse backgrounds, diverse perspectives about policing. You know, we have hired people from other countries. We have hired people from diverse neighborhoods, and we are doing really well in this. And I continue to push this. We've also signed on to the 30 by 30 initiative, which is right now, I think it sits with the BGA. It started at the NIJ, I think. But this is another huge recruitment strategy to get more women involved in policing, because we know that women don't use of force. They don't have the level of citizens complaints like their male counterparts. And women just bring a totally different perspective to policing. And so we're working hard on that. And basically the 30 by 30 initiative is targeting the year 2030 to have 30% women recruits, 30% of women in specialized assignments, and 30% of women in non-traditional assignments in police departments. Think canine, homicide units, tactical units, and SWAT. Next slide, please, Wendy. The next value statement is criminal behavior is met with accountability measures that are fair and just within policing and other systems, with opportunities for individuals to be supported in underlying issues. So we are trying mightily to get as much racial equity training, bias and microaggression training. I'm exploring evaluating the training so I know what works and what doesn't. Some of the other training cornerstones is I want the entire sworn staff to be certified in crisis intervention. Right now, we're looking at about 30% of our officers trained in this, but that's way too low. A lot of our interactions on a daily basis are with people experiencing behavioral health and mental health crisis. So we want to ensure that our officers are all trained in this, but it is a 40-hour certification. So it's a heavy lift to get everybody trained, but we're committed to that. The other, just an example, is the active bystandership training that is also evidence-based as well. Obviously, I feel passionate that we evaluate all of our trainings on an ongoing basis. So all of this is coming in 2023, all important to ensure the accountability measures and the transparency measures are met. Next slide, Wendy. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were still in the same slide, Wendy. The next value statement: officers are part of the communities they serve, building relationships and understanding and addressing problems before having to step up enforcement or resort to force. So we have a neighborhood policing strategy. Steve and I have been working diligently to make sure officers are assigned to specific neighborhoods. And we really are working hard to ensure that we have Spanish-speaking officers assigned to some of our neighborhoods that we know are Spanish-speaking from different parts of the world. So we're actively involved in that. But think about vulnerable communities. We are trying to have liaisons within those communities. So this will be a citywide strategy, and the department and community members can work together to solve problems before escalation. And this is such an important thing to do because the communities really understand crime better than the police officers that respond. They know what's happening in their communities, and they want to address that before that we have to use traditional criminal justice mechanisms. So this is a constant push of mine to get police officers into these neighborhoods, talk to communities. We have found that communities in Boulder overwhelmingly want police to help them address crime and disorder before and to prevent bad things from happening and not simply respond after bad things happen. And so that's the direction we are going in as well. Next slide, Wendy. I think that's it. And I hate PowerPoints, but it had to be done tonight, everybody. So I apologize up front, and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. Thanks for your help, Wendy.
Thanks, Chief.
So we have 30 minutes designated for feedback panelists. And yeah, who's got feedback?
Come on, Victor.
Yeah, I don't know if this is feedback or more of a question, but the staffing, there's staffing issues, staffing shortages. Half of the force, or what is it, 40% of the force is brand new in the last 4 years. That also impacts your ability to train people because they're also brand new, right? So I guess I have two questions. One, it said that some of these specialized units are going to have to be disbanded because of the staffing shortages. So which specialized units are on the chopping block? And the second issue, how are you addressing just, the staffing issue? I saw about the co-work with CU and trying to do the CRT or the boot camp with the post, but the staffing issues are a reality. That's the 60% rule. Our officers are at 74%, and we've noticed just in some of the things that we've seen that people are overworked and have multiple shifts and multiple responsibilities, and then we expect them to absorb of training and do the other things that are required in this plan, where they're simply stressed on just trying to do the job that's at hand. So if you could address that, thank you.
Victor, that's such a great observation, and it's most certainly on my mind all the time. One of the parts of the master plan that we didn't touch tonight was officer wellness, and it has to be addressed, because if officers aren't well, then they're most certainly not going to treat the community well, and we know that, right? And so Steve and I just had a meeting this morning, and we are at a critical juncture. We are at a crossroads with staffing. There is no doubt about it. But Steve has been working hard, and at least for the next couple months, our plan is not to take anybody out of their specialized assignments. Because if you think about communities such as San Juan and other vulnerable population, the unhoused, the work that the housing outreach team does on a daily basis, our officers that respond with Wendy's crew on crisis intervention, on calls for service, that would be devastating to the community to do that. So I'm committed, and so is the city, in ensuring we're doing everything we can to keep our specialized units where they need to be. And that includes the impact hill. These officers are trained on how to deal with college students, with excessive drinking. These are our elite officers that are working on very complex problems. So right now I can tell you we are down 29 officers. I am being told this morning that we just gave officers to 15 to 20 new applicants. And I can tell you, if there's something that I'm proud of, these officers that we are hiring are mostly people coming into Boulder because of what we're doing with reimagining policing. They are second career individuals that are older, that want to be a part of service and not law enforcement. And so this is something that I feel so passionate about. We are not law enforcement officers. We are police officers. We deal with law enforcement issues 10% of our time. And so we have 7 new people coming out of the academy, which will bolster patrol and Steve's duties. And then we are actually, and I'd love your input. We are working on a new police recruiting video that we'll be putting out shortly, but we are paying for a really top-notch recruiting video that emphasizes this police master plan. It emphasizes we want people that are smart, that can prevent bad things from happening before they occur. And so we are on all cylinders trying to get good people in the department. If our numbers do not improve at some point, Steve and I will have to have a real look at our specialized assignments because we have to answer calls for service. But you have a very valid point, and we have to remember that police officers need time off. They need to be with their family. And sometimes we are actually forcing people to work overtime, and that is never a good combination. And so we are working on that. This is not just a problem in Boulder, it is across the state. So great question, great observation, Victor. And it's something that is on my mind all the time.
Thank you so much for presenting. My biggest thing I want to share is, well, first I just want to say I'm really happy to hear that we are going to be doing something like the STAR program. I've been really happy and encouraged by the results that have come out about Denver's program in the last few years. I think especially that the Stanford report that came out recently. So I'm really glad to hear that and would love to hear if Boulder has more plans about what that specifically will look like and implementing and maybe both how it will resemble Denver's and how it will be different. And of course, knowing that our communities are different. And then also I was just thinking with these presentations, you know, the comprehensive document that you have is amazing. And it's really great that you guys are doing these feedback sessions. But I also think that providing succinct list of reforms or succinct list of mission would be really helpful for resources and kind of for these conversations as jumping off points, right? It's hard to go, you know, page 64 or page, you know, 73 of these large documents, and that having kind of that bullet point, here's a 2-pager, and I think more so going to actual specific reforms and what are the practical things that are going to be done rather than the values-based mission-driven, because I think that Chief, you summed that up really well in your presentations, and that's something that can be covered kind of verbally, and so that seeing the specifics would be really helpful, I think, and is something that, you know, as someone who after 8 hours and trying to remember, you know, 8 hours of work and then trying to remember this big proposal I read a few days ago, that would be something that's helpful. So just thank you, and glad to see that steps are being taken.
I'll tell you what, easy. And again, I apologize. I know you all work hard and the last thing you want to do is read a long document. So I get it. Speaking of the STAR program, this should be up and running sometime late 2023. Wendy's on track. It'll be very similar to STAR. They're going to work out an evaluation process for it. The only difference is, and I'll just be honest, and Wendy gets sick of me telling you this, but I'm going to tell you, Denver's holistic systems and the hospitals and the services that they can bring to the table are much different than what we have in Boulder. And this continues to be problematic on a lot of fronts because at the end of the day, we do not have the systems that a large city has. But we are going to do our best to do our best. But we don't have the hospital systems that Denver has and the contracts that they have been able to. But Wendy, I know, is working hard on that, and we should have, I know we're in front of council at some point, but I will keep you in the loop on this, and I know Wendy's on top of it.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what the chief said. So for folks who are interested, we are going to be talking to City Council about that program proposal at the December 8th meeting. So folks can tune into that. And high level, to answer some of your questions, Ariel, I'll tell you that we're structuring it very similar to the response model that you see in Denver with a clinician and a paramedic. Where we're trying to really kind of improve on that model is we're also going to add some intensive case management. So case managers for people who have really complex needs. So when that team comes across them and deals with the immediate problem in the moment and helps try to connect that person, depending on the person, there's sometimes a lot of more intensive work walking by their side to really, to really get them progress on where they need to go. And so we're going to add that into the model, or that's going to be our proposal at least, is to really kind of amp that up for better service. And it's true that the chief is right. One important thing whenever we're talking about a response program of any type in the community is that, those upstream resources, if, for instance, if what somebody needs is inpatient substance use treatment and there's not enough of that in the community, then there's only so far a STAR type team or, any team like that, there's going to be some limitations, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of great improvements there, but it's true that it doesn't necessarily solve all the other issues in the community. And so I hope does that help with your question or your comment?
We should all be pushing for better regional behavioral health and drug addiction services. Colorado really does not do well in this area. And so Wendy and I push hard at the state level for these resources, and we're just behind the curve as a state, and they're desperately needed.
That was actually some feedback that I had taken away from specifically the Reimagined Policing Plan. As I'd kind of hope to see some actionable items addressing that issue. The police departments throughout the country have a very strong voice. There's a lot of institutional trust there. And so I'd personally like to see that voice and trust used to advocate for, increased funding going to mental health support, towards addiction services, towards affordable housing, because I hear the advocates of those issues out there in the community. And in these meetings, we hear from the police department talking about how that relates. But I don't see the police department necessarily standing in the moment with those people advocating for that funding. We live in one of the richest communities in the world, and yet we have people experiencing homelessness, people going hungry, people who can't get the care they need. And so it just seems like an opportunity for the police department to fundamentally address the issue and help the public to come along as well, in understanding that a lot of these policing problems really do come from upstream problems of a lack of investment. And my second comment is very small and detailed and finicky, so I apologize for that. But on page 54, there's a table under the police oversight panel section about commendations. The police oversight panel has not issued any commendations from the panel, and very intentionally so. There is a lot of good data describing our work in our annual report, and so it might I would suggest swapping that table out for some information describing our work, especially since the commendations might be misinterpreted as to the police oversight panel's purpose. Thanks.
Daniel, if I could just address, there is no more leading voice in policing on these issues than me. I meet with the governor. I've met with our state representatives to the point where they're sick of hearing from me. I've been public on my statements, public at council on these issues. I meet with council all the time. In fact, some of these state representatives said if I call again, they're not going to answer me. So they know how I feel about these issues, and they are all intertwined, and we have to do better as a state. But I don't want you to think that I'm not out there all the time talking about this, beating the drum on these issues, because at the end of the day, I do feel like the police, a lot of times, they're the last people standing in a long line of failures across the state. And I'm very vocal about that. And then the other one, I don't know, Wendy, I can't address that. Like, we just need to address it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I took a look at what you're referencing, Daniel, and yeah, it seems like your concern is maybe getting the police oversight panel, mixed up with, commendations, which you're not directly involved in. And so it seems like we need to kind of rearrange some of the information so that is not confusing to people, since that's not a part of the panel's work. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or even to include some of the graphics we provide in our annual report about community complaints, about our decisions, that sort of thing. That might be really valuable in reaffirming the value of the police oversight panel to the community.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I can echo that, I was going to actually say the same. We we have a lot of beautiful graphics that Joey has put together for our last annual report. And if the section is titled Police Oversight Panel, I would appreciate the data to be referencing our work, and have the commendations not be in that at all, because that is not related to what we do. Thank you.
Great, that's good feedback. So we can make a note for that change. And then just as a side note on the earlier comment, I will say that I think something that those of us working inside the city have known for a long time is that departments like Housing and Human Services work a lot with the police department, to try and really bolster all those support mechanisms, because both departments come into contact with a lot of folks that need help, end up in crisis. But that's not necessarily, to your point, something that the public always directly sees. It's something that just we've done for years together behind the scenes. And so maybe there's some better ways to really communicate that partnership.
Yeah, and that's just looking at this plan and feedback, and not to bogart the time, is that what I'm saying is I would easily walk away from this plan understanding that the department is asking for more funding, and not an understanding that the department is also advocating for funding for upstream issues. And I think that's an opportunity to, if that work is happening, to talk about that work in the plan.
Any other feedback from panelists?
I reviewed it a while ago, and I did go like page by page. I'll just pick out a couple of them. I think page 23 references a lot about the mental health support. And I was just very curious about how the logistics of that was going to work, with mental health partners no longer providing after hours care and support to community members. I do know that since this was drafted, 988 is a thing, but without those resources in the area, people are going out to Littleton, Greeley, areas that have the 24-hour stabilization items, or they're staying out there holds in hospital ERs under security guards, which is not okay. if you need formal data around that, I'm an LPC and can help gather that, because that's a real thing, especially for minors who are experiencing that. A lot of them time out in ERs, and because there's just no room in the entire state for them. Page 49 referenced that about 7% of officers are bilingual, and I thought that was actually great. I did do a ride along, and there was only one person who spoke Spanish. So they kind of got double the load because they not only had to respond to their own calls, but then they had to double back and do extra work. And I just had wondered if there was like a dedicated person or some way to ensure that they're also being compensated for that aspect. And it's not just like, hey, you've got a bigger load. I really was curious about on page 50, it mentioned that officers with a higher level of education use less force. So I thought that was a great stat. So I'm wondering like what's being done to have those recruits have that background in the recruiting cycle. Of course, it sounded like Wendy was making sure not to say master. And when she said the plan, I definitely think that is a word that needs to come out of there. It shouldn't be in there at all. There are a couple of alternatives.
Hey, Martha, do you mind if I share something real quickly? This is
Oh,
Pam.
sure.
I just wanted to share that we've heard that feedback, not just from this group, but from others. And just today, our overall planning coordination committee that meets citywide had a lengthy conversation about alternative titling for plans, eliminating that from our city's vocabulary. So we have a recommendation based on today that we're bringing back to our community connector groups. That is something that you will see change citywide, hopefully as soon as possible, but just wanted to reflect that we're taking that piece seriously, and like good bureaucrats are trying to get rid of that word from our dictionary.
Yes, that means so much, because I know when I read it, it was so long that I had the robot read it, and it was like, it was 140 times. Like, oh my God. And I guess overall, I was just really intentional about the languaging piece. On page 71, references the Zaid Atkinson incident, Sammy Lawrence incident. Those items did not occur because of those individuals. It was the treatment that those individuals received. So just kind of reframing that in a way that calls attention to the action rather than the victim would be helpful, because it's not something that those individuals did that prompted how they were treated. And that I think will resolve the discrepancy and alignment in a plan like this. Because I think, everyone around the country is trying to reimagine policing, which is a good thing, but it's the legs that will have to shift a little bit. I don't know if that's more community events, what is that? The cost of pizza in a place. So just different areas like that would be great. But overall, I think this is a very important and necessary start, and I was hopeful at the end of it.
Thanks, Martha. I really appreciate that. We'll address the language. And gosh, well, you had a lot of questions. I'm wondering if, Wendy, did you write them all down? I'll answer them really quick.
I took some notes. I'll start with the first one, since I think, Martha, you might have been referencing there has been some times in the recent past where the Mental Health Partners Crisis Center was not able to offer 24/7 service, which is what all of our regional community crisis centers are supposed to be doing. And so, you know, so certainly you're right that presents a big challenge when we're trying to direct people to mental health services instead of the justice system, and then, you know, the mental health service isn't there. And so the Crisis Center is back. I mean, unless there's been a very recent change, but it was able to go back to 24/7. But it's, I mean, there's a very serious mental health crisis across our country that, and part of which is really heavily impacted by a workforce shortage when it comes to behavioral health professionals. And of course, the least, well, maybe not for everybody, but for some folks, the least attractive thing to do is work the graveyard shift at the crisis center. So that's, I mean, that's obviously a bigger, that's one of those upstream community problems that we really need to work hard on, along with our countywide partners, our state partners, you know, the federal government, to change those. Because I think, like, probably the chief and the deputy chief can tell you, when the police do end up in, you know, situations where they are kind of the last resort response, then trying to really, you know, find a good place for individuals to access care can be a challenge. And that's true whether it's the police responding or whether it's, for instance, a clinician co-response or an alternative response team, because they can be there for the immediate situation and the response, but that's, in a lot of cases, probably not all that individual needs. So I don't know if that helps with your question, but I would just, the summary is, you're right, it's a big problem, and it's going to take a lot of work on the mental health front.
What else you got for me, Wendy?
The bilingual officers, I believe there was a question because that's a great limited one, and the compensation and kind of the workload they face if they're kind of the only ones that speak the language.
Steve, how many Spanish speaking officers? I know you're Spanish speaking. How many Spanish speaking officers do we have? We have quite a few, right?
We've got I think about 15 on patrol. We've got a couple in detectives. Just one of our detectives that we just moved from patrol detective to Spanish speaking, and so now he's getting the brunt of the Spanish speaking investigations. And so it's a very good point, Martha. In fact, the conversation just came up with the union last week that they're going to try to explore some additional compensation, if it's not financial compensation, some sort of benefit, additional 3 hours a week of comp time or time off. So I definitely, it's such a needed skill, and it's a very keen observation. Those officers end up getting a lot more subpoenas for court because they go interpret on, it's usually more serious cases. And so we're acutely aware of it. And
I would support an hourly increase for our Spanish speaking officers. But it's a union issue that has to be brought up by them, and then I would support it. But great observation, Martha. I'm glad you got out and did a ride along. That's awesome.
We do have educational requirements because it was noted that generally there's better results.
Yeah, and this is something I get in trouble about all the time, but I'm not backing down on the education requirements because it's so important. Can you imagine having a medical doctor and tell them that they don't need to go to medical school when they're performing life and death, surgeries and so forth? It's the same way I feel about the police. It's such an important role in society. We need education. I'm not saying the education system is the best way, and we're going to be exploring that with our new police academy. And maybe it's a certification program in crime prevention and crime science principles and environmental criminology. But to say that police officers don't need higher levels of education is just not the way I want to go in. And unfortunately, across the country, you see more and more police agencies dropping their education requirements because we are in such a crisis with policing across the country.
Quick time check, y'all. We have about 2 minutes.
Thanks, Daniel. Hey, everyone. I just want to say thanks a lot for sitting through all this. You know, you can always call me with questions. We can always meet one-on-one, have a cup of coffee, dive deeper into these issues. All this is so important to get right. And I appreciate you reading all of that, especially with your busy schedules. So thank you so much. Wendy, thank you. I really appreciate all of your work. I hope you have a great evening.
And if panel members have additional written feedback, is that something they can send along to Wendy or Chief Harold?
I think Wendy will take it and then she'll browbeat me to address it.
Perfect.
Yeah, that would be great. And my contact information is listed on the Reimagine Policing webpage where you accessed the plan. But also I do have kind of that standardized City of Boulder email address where it's schwartzw@bouldercolorado.gov. So if you think of something later, absolutely feel free to reach out to me. Happy to talk anytime. And I will just echo the chief's thanks for your time and really for the tremendous effort of reading a really big city document, because that's not on everybody's list of fun things to do. But your questions and your comments, I think as a result, were just so thoughtful and helpful to us. So a great thanks for that.
Thanks.
Thank you. We really appreciate it and appreciate the time. Panelists, we will also take our 5-minute break right now as well before we go on with the rest of our meeting. So bye, Wendy. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we'll see you guys back here in 5 minutes. Thank you. Back. Oh my gosh, it's so fun seeing everyone's camera flash on. Alrighty, so it looks like we don't have any members of the public on now. Just for everyone as a status update. So we are going to next go into a status report on member application and selection process. So I will let Martha share out as she is our member of the panel who is sitting on the selection committee, but I can also say from our side that applications close officially tomorrow. We have gotten so many, I can't say how many because I haven't checked. I just know that they're all going to this email folder and it's a lot, which is great that there is so much interest. And I think we're going to have, you know, a lot of community members who want to get involved, which is a wonderful thing to see. Martha, I don't know if you want to share anything specific or Daniel, but that's where we are in terms of what I have right now.
I don't know that I have anything specific to share other than we're selecting dates. And that was based on a potential 50 applicants. So we might need to select more time if there's more than that.
As of today, we had 52 applicants that submitted online. That does not include, I think, anyone who might have showed up in person. So, yeah.
Great.
Oh, Amy.
I don't believe we've had anybody show up in person today.
Thanks.
Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I also one thing I just remembered too is that I know that Colorado law, I got an email today that they have publicly shared it, the last few newsletters that they have going around. So yeah, just since that's relevant, since I got that today. So next we're going to talk about selecting new co-chairs, and I'll let Daniel take it away.
Yes. So Ariel and I were doing some math on this one. And so our intention was to solicit new co-chairs and have that vote in November. So our terms end technically at the end of December. So we were appointed on the calendar year. Now, the issue we wanted to bring to y'all is that felt maybe a little disingenuous with bringing on our new panelists, that then they would not get to vote for the co-chairs that would be managing them for the first year and managing the panel. And so what Ariel wanted,
or be up for co-chair themselves,
or be up for co-chair. That's true. Right. Exactly. Someone could run for co-chair. And so what we wanted to bring to y'all was a proposal that we can vote on tonight or postpone. We can think about it as well, but potentially to vote on tonight to extend Ariel and Mai's terms to the end of January. And so then in that case, then we could serve through then voting at first meeting in January for co-chairs. Alternatively, we could extend our terms to February, which then would give the new panelists a full month between general meetings to engage with the process. And so that's what we wanted to bring to you all for discussion, and then hopefully just to make a decision about how we should proceed on this.
And also, just before we open for discussion too, my term ends as a panelist in February too. So that would be kind of just me rounding out everything as co-chair. So yeah, open to what you guys think, but we were trying to address that.
I mean, I see how it can make sense, but in a group that is like 4 people, not like doing weird deals and stuff, that sounds kind of sus.
I mean, I totally get that. We haven't had a meeting where 2 panelists haven't been missing since over a year. So that's not gonna, there's no way around that. Yeah.
I think also, I mean, again, this came to us in terms of thinking about the perspective of you just joined this panel and all of a sudden you're told that these 2 people are in charge who you don't know, have not gotten any say in, and they've already been on it. I think it's just it's
exactly what happened to us.
It's a hard foot to start out. What do you mean? How so?
Like, we all came together and we voted on people we didn't know.
Right, but we all started at the same time, which was somewhat different too.
That's what our concern is, that we would appoint the new 2 co-chairs and the new panelists would not get the opportunity to vote for those co-chairs. Yeah.
Right. Hadassah?
I will say the bylaws do say that election takes place annually in February.
And we got off because Susie, that's right, because Susie and Sasha left early.
So I think technically we would just stick with that.
Yeah. I think it's great if it's already in the law.
Yeah.
I just didn't want us like changing stuff
right,
because that sounded sketch.
Exactly. Totally get that. Yeah.
Good catch, Hadassah. Good catch. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or change anything. I mean, it's let It's in black and white. February it is.
Governance chair for the win.
I would like to nominate Hadassah.
Right, right.
We're not there yet. That's not where we are. Don't start that.
Victor, I wanted to check in with you too, how you're feeling.
Sounds great.
Okay, cool. Well then, great. We'll follow our bylaws. Done on a bun, y'all.
Daniel, do you have anything else to add to just about, I think you had something about communications possibly.
Yeah, that was the other one. Yeah. So another thing Ariel and I had talked about. So just kind of going back a couple weeks ago, so we had the case review that we wanted the full panel on. And then I ended up being the one member who couldn't make it because of my schedule. And I wanted to revisit that because Ariel and I have been talking a lot lately about kind of a growing challenge that we are experiencing and facing as co-chairs. And it comes down to getting meetings scheduled and our responsiveness over email. And I bring up that case specifically because, that was an instance where, Joey asked for availability. Most of the panel communicated to Joey that we weren't available for that Wednesday night. Three of us didn't respond at all to that request. Then we had to go into that mad scramble to try and get the case review scheduled so that we didn't lose our opportunity. And then the outcome of that, then, a panel member was excluded, and I was the only panel member who actually wasn't available that night. And so, I'd encourage us, y'all to think of how that would make you feel if that was your situation as well. And I think it's something, especially as we bring in our new panelists, I just really implore all of us to be more regularly checking our emails. And, when we talk about transparency and honesty as a panel, when we come together to find meeting times, to really be transparent and honest about our availability to follow through on this commitment. Because there have been several times where we have jeopardized the work of the panel because we weren't responding to meeting requests or we weren't responding honestly. The selection committee got really close. We had to find a whole new week to schedule, and that was around one person who was not being transparent with their time with us. And so that has ramifications, and it can create an exclusionary culture as well. If we're doing this on the fly, if we're not working all together on the same doodle poll or the same process, that creates people who are in and that creates people who are out. And so I'm speaking as a person who was out the last time around, and I'm not holding any grudges or anything. I know there was nothing personal. It's just the way, an accidental thing. But and Ariel, to pass it to you too, is just, I think we both really implore you to just please be on top of your email. Please be on top of meetings. We're doing our best. We're working our this is a public meeting, our butts off. And that would just really help us and help this work to go smoothly.
Yeah, I agree. Not a ton to add to, but I think just also with Flo being here, who you guys are going to hear from shortly, and being our interim monitor, I think exactly what Daniel said, being aware of how us falling behind can impact other people's time. Flo is in New York. She's helping us. She's staying up late. She is trying to manage a system that she just inherited and is partially here for. And so if we can make her life easier by checking our emails and getting our schedule straight, that's something that we really need to do and take the time to do. And so I know it can be hard, and I know that this panel is a lot and we are undersized right now, but every day, every other day, just be checking that email. And especially if there are scheduling or doodles, that's important. We've also had recently, and this is it's come up a few times too, that Daniel and I haven't been transparent, has been mentioned, that there's been a level of this information wasn't shared or this wasn't disseminated widely. Generally, I can say it's being shared, and it's people not checking their email thoroughly or reviewing email before they are sending something about Daniel or I not being transparent or sharing information. If anything, I feel like I'm bothering you all, and you have plenty of information. Pretty much every document is in the SharePoint and widely accessible. So I would also just implore you to, before sending off an email, thinking that we are trying to hide anything, because there's really nothing to hide at all. Go into that SharePoint, go through your inbox and just check your bases first. And this is to hold myself to that too, right? I often am checking my email in the middle of work, on my lunch break. I have 15 minutes, I don't see something and I can jump to conclusions, and that is not the most productive way to be operating. So this is just a kind, check your email, step it up. We all have to, and we have to hold ourselves and each other accountable. So thank you, appreciate it. We can probably move on to committee reports at this point, though I don't think, from what Daniel said at the beginning of the meeting, that anyone had anything too big to share right now. Is that correct? Victor, Hadassah, Martha? If any of you want to jump in, if there's anything brief with either of yours, feel free. And if not, you can just say pass.
I mean, I think I'm the only one who sent an email, so can we go back to that?
What'd you say?
I feel like I'm the only one who sent an email, so can we go back to that?
Go back to what? Sorry.
This, like, people not checking their emails thing. Like, I responded to the poll, and there are meetings happening, then we're not getting notes for it. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, because I wasn't referring in specific to anyone. This is more a general theme that Daniel and I have seen. That's why this was brought up. So if you're referring to a specific email, I'd have to know which one. Okay, I'm just asking, like, because we are trying to be transparent and I'm not picking up what is being said, like what is being referenced exactly?
What's being referenced? I'm trying to understand. And Amy, I see your hand is raised in just a second too. We have had things where people said they don't know about meetings, or they don't know how numbers for things, they don't know certain dates, they think they've been left off of correspondence. And often, and I will champion Daniel in this, he has often been able to find the precise email, when it was sent, who was included, and re-forward it to people. I'm not talking about a specific instance. This has been a repeated thing that has started to occur. And because Daniel and I are making a huge effort to be as transparent and clear as possible, it's, it feels a little disparaging, because we're really putting our best foot forward.
Yeah, and that's that's that kind of hearing 3 times from 3 different people about secret meetings from the co-chairs. Those are the words, and we have to be careful, because these are things that go right at the integrity of this panel's work. That's where Ariel and I have not had a single meeting with the monitor that wasn't on the list of meetings we shared with y'all at the beginning of the year, that we give those updates at the next meeting about what we talked about, those sorts of things. And so that was something that, in particular, because in one instance it occurred during a public meeting, and that can be really dangerous if those misconceptions go out. And so, to what Ariel says is, we talk all the time about transparency, and there's, the only time that we've never withheld information. For example, for Joey let us know when he was leaving a few weeks before we told you all during the meeting, but that was something that needed to be said in person, we knew. So that's why we delayed on that. It was also a personnel issue with the staff. That's why we delayed on it. That was something that was called into question, So there's instances where we do wait to give information in person, because we feel like it's important for a lot of these conversations to happen, eye to eye, face to face. But as far as like withholding information, at no point have Ariel and I done that. But as those, even just the implication that that's happening, if that's voiced in public, if that's voiced over email, that can be, that strikes at the integrity, it strikes at Ariel and Mai's integrity. And I know there's no malice behind it, but it strikes at the integrity of us to do this work. And Martha, I know that this is not in response. Ariel and I've been balancing about how to bring this to the panel for many, many months now. These instances have been recurring. And so that's why we're bringing it now. And I do want to say that it is a heart to heart thing. We're not here to guilt anyone or to blame anyone, because, honestly, I think it just has a lot to do with us being the first panel and being a fresh panel and getting our feet under us. Like, this is all new to us, and we should be challenging and stepping up and questioning how we do this to make sure we're doing it right. And I never want to lose that, but it is one of those things. Is I feel a lot of the reason the work is so hard right now is in part just due to our responsiveness of being really attentive to our inbox, so we can schedule a meeting in one exchange instead of a whole week of like going back and forth through emails. And so that's what it is. And again, it's not, no shame, no judgment here. It is like, let's work through the growing pains, especially as we're about to bring all these new panelists along who are going to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about how we do things and how often they should be checking their emails. And so I think it's important for us to be leading that attentiveness with the new panel members.
I appreciate that, because I think that's kind of more what I was wanting, because like I'm very like plain language. So like, unless we know what people need, we don't know. And then like I can't find the SharePoint all the time, so it's hard to like go back and do things. I don't know if that can live somewhere. I don't know if we can stick it on, maybe like it can be on the bottom of everybody's email or something, but if that can be in an easily accessible area, I know that would personally help me, because for whatever reason, my city email is not linked to my phone anymore. Like I can go in and see past emails, but nothing's past July.
So you can download the app for SharePoint and log on to that. You can also, I actually have been having some SharePoint issues, and I think it's Josh Ferez, Gianna, who is City of Boulder tech person. He's helping me next week with some issues. And so he could probably help you troubleshoot, Martha, or figure out how to make the SharePoint, a saved tab separate from your email, so you have issues to or access to all of the documentation. I'm just now using him as a resource. I'm happy to forward on the email. He's been very friendly and very helpful.
I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not a techie person whatsoever, and so I mean, similarly today, I didn't have our general meeting procedure right before this meeting and was frantically emailing Daniel. So yeah, I mean, organization is also half of the challenge and half of the battle here too, right? And we have not only a lot of emails, but an enormous amount of documents, Martha. So I think it's a fair point. I will forward on Josh's email address to everyone so we have it.
And I am working on that. It was delayed by Joey's departure. I am still working on that kind of just quick one sheet manual for panel members as well. That's going to have the link to all those references as well. Because Martha, to your credit, Microsoft is a hot mess, and SharePoint is can be very challenging. I'm going to be wrapping that up pretty soon and sharing that out too.
Amy, your hand's raised.
Thank you for that. We can look and see if there's some type of training that we've got somewhere. Perhaps there's time we can set up with our colleagues in our what are they called now? Innovation and Technology Department, not Information and Technology. Our Innovation and Technology Department, and see what we can work out for that. I can look into that. But I had a question more on the kind of logisticy side for some of these subcommittee meetings that are happening. So I know Joey had sent a series of them out, but of course we don't have control over his inbox or his calendaring anymore. And so I sent, I know that there's a governance meeting this week. So I sent an appointment out with a Zoom link in that appointment. Just so I can hop on really quick, get the meeting started so y'all can roll, and that way it's not burdening Gianna as much, when she's got things going on. Is there a list somewhere of all the different panel meetings when they occur, so we can go ahead and send those out and set those up so we can plan ahead? What's the best protocol so Gianna and I can support y'all?
So we do have, I'll remind panelists, we started at the beginning of the year with this full, I think it was Taisha had asked us for a full list of meetings. And so we have this document, I just popped it in the SharePoint with all our meetings. And so that was the meeting schedule. And so panelists, I think, and co-chairs, I think the question is how accurate that is now to any new changes of what's been going on with your committees, changes of, and which is fine, right? Things change. That's totally. But as to the list, Amy, this was accurate. And so maybe then co-chairs, if you wouldn't mind going through and just updating your upcoming meetings, that might be helpful for Amy. And then, of course, for the rest of us too, tracking meetings.
So which, are you putting the link in the chat? I'm looking through the SharePoint and I'm not sure exactly. I'm still familiarizing.
I just popped the link in the SharePoint, but it's under, there's a folder called managerial.
Yep.
And so that's where we've just been keeping kind of the procedural stuff.
Okay.
I see you, Hadassah.
I can confirm the governance are all correct.
Awesome.
And I believe Martha just confirmed legacy is also correct, other than Thanksgiving. I think we had changed the one of.
It's nice to be able to take this on at the end of the year. Okay, got it. I found it, October, November, December. So we've got the governance, the legacy, and the community engagement. Okay.
Fantastic.
And do we at the top have the leads of each of those? Could we add that, like who the chair is for each of those subcommittees? Could somebody add that in? That would be helpful too, just in case there's something that pops up like, hey, Martha, can you log in 5 minutes early so I can pass the baton?
And Amy, on that note too, in that same managerial folder, there's a file called, oh God, Microsoft, panel contact sheet and committee assignments.
Yep.
And so that has all the info of who's in which committee, who's
wonderful. I see it.
Cool. As well as term limits, emails, all, and phone numbers too. So you can,
right on.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it.
We're getting there. We're getting there, y'all. Like,
really, we're all in this together, especially right now. Like,
in that case, Ariel, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm eating apples, and I figured I'd spare everyone from both the crunch and watching me eat. So do people want to do a quick committee report for each one, or should we move on because no one has met right now?
For legacy, we have not met for 2 months in a row, but that's given me time to like start to suss through all that data that the data doctor person gave to us. So I'm noting some just trends and stuff, but we haven't met to discuss everybody's thoughts yet.
Okay, I see Victor passed. Thank you, Martha. Hadassah, anything or?
Nothing really notable. We also did not meet last month, but we will be resuming this next month, focusing on training and any other bylaw amendments. Next meeting is the 19th of October, next Wednesday.
Did the guiding principles ever get approved and sent out to people? I remember that was like a timetable for that. I don't remember what the time was.
I know you asked us all for feedback, but I think at any point when we're ready to vote for them in the meeting, we can just call for a vote.
We had asked for feedback, and then there was more feedback than we had initially intended, and so it is taking a little bit of we still have some wordsmithing and editing to do based on the feedback. So that's where we are with the guiding principles.
Awesome sauce.
Amazing. We can go on to our interim monitors report.
Hi, I'm Flo Finkel, your interim monitor. Mike, are you there?
I sure am. Good
Do you
evening,
want to
everyone.
Share the screen because we have like this, tiny PowerPoint.
Jana, can you make flow? There we go. Thanks.
Mike, I think is gonna talk first.
Only to say hello. It's great to be with you all. We've had the pleasure of at least meeting a few of you over Zoom, but good to see the whole group. And so Flo is going to be your day-to-day contact. I am part of the Office of Independent Review group. And so the way we have sort of worked out, it's going to take 3 of us to fill the shoes of Joey. We've decided, but day to day, Flo will be doing a lot of the in-depth case review, case study, scheduling of panel meetings, et cetera, until you all get a new monitor. Teresa Magula is part of our team. She was planning on being here this evening, but she had a family emergency that took her away from the meeting. But she will, I'm confident she'll be at the next meeting and will be backing up Flo and also helping out if Flo's not available. And I'm just really sort of trying to make sure all the balls keep going in the right direction, keep them all in the air, and providing sort of strategic advice and feedback on a higher level, 50,000 foot level perspective. Just a little bit about me. I've done enough oversight that we don't, if I went into detail, it would take all night. So I'm just going to give the older I get, the longer this takes. So all I can tell you is that I was a former federal prosecutor of police officers for a number of years in the U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, and then moved on to oversight, and have been doing oversight for, gosh, maybe 30 different jurisdictions over the course of the last 20 years. I will stop and let Flo take over and get into the meat and potatoes of what we have for you today.
Thanks, Mike. I can't see you, so I'm just gonna plow ahead. And I've met 4 of you. I met Hadassah and Martha in Fort Worth at the NACOL conference. I sit on the board of NACOL. I've been a board member for 5 years. And just in meeting the other folks from the panel who are here, like Mike, I was a prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office, and I ended up prosecuting police while I was there. And then I went to the New York City Civilian Complaint Review Board and was there for 11 years as a deputy executive director and executive director. That is the largest police oversight agency in the country, and it's an independent investigative model. I ended up working internally in the New York City Department of Correction, overseeing internal investigations, which was an eye-opening experience. I've had a couple different consulting jobs for working for the Seattle Police Monitor, working for the District of Columbia Police Reform Commission, and now with OIR. And I'm just basically copied the format that Joey did for his PowerPoint presentation. So since you last met, you conducted 1 full case file review. That file is still under the police department consideration. There are 3 cases awaiting panel review. I've scheduled 2 of them, and I'm waiting for 1 panelist to schedule the other. There were 5 total complaints filed in September, 4 misconduct complaints and 1 serious misconduct, and 3 an additional 3, the monitor classified as community inquiries. As of a week ago, there had been no further complaints or community inquiries, and there are about 12 open cases on the panel's docket. That includes the case pending disposition in the police department. And can stop sharing my screen. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm anxious for the panel to go through and select what cases it's going to review in the future and get assignments for those. And yeah, and then I will try to aggressively schedule them.
Panelists, any questions or anything for Mike or Flo?
I will say, and what we're going to be focusing on is basically shepherding the panel and the city through this interim process. So we might keep a sort of a list of big picture ideas that we can share with you and the police department and the city. We probably won't have time to work on implementing them. And so my focus is going to be on case processing. And in the 2 weeks I've been on the job, it did take, we had some technical glitches in getting access to the police department databases we need. I made bookmarks of the SharePoint drives so I can access them from my Mac. And I've pretty much reviewed almost every single pending case at this point to try to get up to speed.
And I was going to mention two panelists just practically. So the co-chairs and Amy and Flo and Mike, we've been meeting, filling our regular Joey slots with what do we do without Joey conversations. And so kind of generally speaking, anything of Joey's work that was related to case review, the police department, you know, that's Flo and Mike. Anything more administrative though, Gianna and Amy are our resources for that. And so anytime we, you know, if for setting up meetings, if you need someone to take notes at meetings, you know, Martha, your questions about IT and that sort of things, those are things we should direct to our city staff support. Because they'll be the ones to help us, and Flo will give us a shrug and be like, hey, why don't you ask Amy? And so just keep that in mind over the next few months as far as Joey's regular duties, how they're being covered.
And last thing, sorry. Also, I just wanted to note that Flo and Mike too are great resources for us right now in terms of kind of insight into best practices, right? They have a lot of experience in this field and all of us are new. And so I think if you, and I don't want to speak for Mike and Flo and they can talk to their availability, but you know, if you're curious about something that you're doing and how that fits in with what they've seen in other cities and in other departments and how it's worked with other committees, I would encourage you to use them kind of as just as a best practices resource, or using their experience as we kind of shape how we go forward and move forward. So kind of that consult asset can come in. So yeah, thank you guys. We're happy you're here.
Victor, I saw you unmuted. Did you have?
Yes. So how long is this relationship going to last? We looking like 6 months, a year?
Yeah, I'll let
That
Amy
is
answer
something
that.
Amy might be best positioned to answer.
Yeah, so we are hoping to fill this position as quickly as possible. The recruiter is finishing up the profile and hoping to get that recruitment started here in the next couple of weeks. Usually these types of recruitments do take a couple of months. And if we hire somebody who's not local, we have to factor in another month for moving and things like that, so people can get their lives together. I would say our last recruitment for this position, Victor, took about, I think we started in February of 2020, and we had our monitor on site in August 2020.
Amy, can you speak to the involvement?
Now it's like 6 months. I know, I'm like, oh, geez. I do believe it will go quicker because we're not dealing with COVID as much as we were at that time. We were right in the thick of things at that point. Like I was at a NACOL conference the week before we shut down. And so, yeah, I think it's probably a 3 to 4 month process. We will be working here once we get the position all ready and posted. Definitely going to be sharing that with all of you so you can share with your networks as well as like with our NACOL. And we've got a whole list of other areas where we want to get that brochure taken out. And then we're going to be talking to this panel. Would love to have a couple of you on that interview process once we get to those interviews. And then also in talking with you all about what a community engagement session would look like, because we'd also like to host some type of community forum where people in the community can come and ask questions and get to know their candidates as well. Does that help, Victor? Okay. Anyone else have questions about that? I would like sooner rather than later, but we also want to make sure that we get the right person in the role for our community.
Cool beans. Well, in that case, thank you for the interim report. Thank you for being here, Mike, Flo, and Amy. And so panelists, let's move on to selecting our cases for review. So let me switch gears. And so that was in our meetings folder. And of course, Flo sent it out to us in advance. And we don't have any members of the community on right now, but just in case anyone watches this later, we'll just remind the public that what we're reviewing are case summaries. These are not complaint summaries. So these are summaries of anything that any police camera footage related to the complaint, any available evidence, initial investigations, other complaints or extenuating circumstances. We do have to keep these case summaries private. We keep all this information confidential until the case is resolved and the chief has made their determination, in which case the monitor then reads out the full details of the case and the determination at the next public meeting. And so then that information becomes publicly available and then is also published in our annual report. So without any more ado, oh boy, I'm tired. Without any more preamble, I will read out the full code for each case, panel members, and then we will vote by show of hands. So first up is SM2022005. And this allegation is based on city policy on sexual harassment. I'll give you a second just to review it. That's Rule 1, Rule 4, and Rule 8 allegations. And so panelists, by show of hands, those of you who would like to review this case. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a majority. Thank you. So we will review SM2022005. Next up is SM2022006. Allegation city policy on sexual harassment. This is a Rule 4 and a Rule 8. Give you a second.
Before we vote,
Yeah.
Daniel, I was confused on this one. Are there more details here or something missing? I was confused. I mean, it seems like it pertains in some ways, right, to 005. And is this just what, if everyone has the document open, what is starred here in terms of content? Is that what we are reviewing? No.
Do you want me to respond?
As generally as you can. Yeah.
There are two separate cases.
Two separate cases.
Yeah. The two subjects in each case are sergeants.
Okay.
In the second case, that's not going to be ready anytime soon. I believe that there have been additional allegations that have been raised.
Okay.
And this person is also on leave, paid leave. The start is something that Joey put in just to indicate that it was a city sexual harassment policy, not the PD.
Got it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
So Justin, since you're saying that this one, so why are we even considering it when it's not ready?
Because it's there and it was in the case summaries that he had prepared, and I didn't want to I might adopt a little bit of different system and write them up a little bit differently, but I decided to err on the side of just submitting what he had prepared, and I hadn't reviewed a lot of the cases at the time that this needed to go out.
And so in the past, there was one or two other instances like this in the past, panelists, where we asked Joey to postpone, to come back to us with more, with a more fleshed out, once, what am I trying to say? Once more of the investigation had proceeded and the additional allegations had been considered. And so I think we can, if we'd like, we can ask Flo to postpone the vote on this until we have that additional information. That's an option as well.
Okay.
So maybe let's take that. Would we like to, so for SM 2022006, show of hand panelists to postpone voting on review until we have more information? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great, we'll postpone that one then. Thank you. Thank you all. Next up is, I think that's an MI 2022022. This is allegations rule 2, conformance with laws. I'll give you just a second. And panelists in favor of a full review of this case, show of hands. 1, I have 2. I have 3, 4. That's the majority then, so we'll go ahead and review that. That's MI 2022022 that we will review. Next up is MI 2022024. This is rule 1 and rule 5. Give you just a second. And panelists in favor of reviewing this case, full review of this case, show of hands. We will not review MI 2022024 then. And last up is MI 2022023. This is rule 1. Panelists in favor of a full review of this case, show of hands. Thank you. We will not review MI 2022023. Now, panelists, so we had we've had a little back and forth here. Do we want to sign up for cases that now to review, or do we want to do that over email?
I would recommend we sign up now, and then Flo can handle the scheduling, or with Gianna too on the back end for setting up when these work. But I think we should, so Flo has a contacts for each case.
So there's that, there's a case pending ending 021 that I sent an email about
earlier today.
Could get people signed. I don't know if the panel's considered sort of just assigning people, going down a list and then skipping, so that because there's only 6 people here. So I'll do whatever you want to do, but.
Yeah, and I think Flo did that in the, oh, sorry, Martha, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to offer, like, I usually have an open Thursday, and if we needed to set like a day, like that could be review day and I could just show up. But I don't know what what the disconnect is, but like I hate doodle polls. Like I've been very vocal about them. I will click them and do it when I have to, but if there's any way to streamline it somehow, where there's like a designated day or something, that would be incredibly helpful.
Okay.
I would rather we have a process of signing up now, so that it's on record and not going back and forth, because that's where the confusion is coming all along. Because if you do it now, it's on record that you offered to sign up for something, so you better
Happy to take the
walk the
assignments
talk.
now, because I think it'll be a lot easier to schedule.
Same.
So we have that first case 005.
Just for the record, I prefer to use the document that we have where we all put in our names and sign up that way. I prefer like a visual. I like to put it in and see who else.
What document is that?
So it's on our thing. It says sign up case reviews. Let me back and see.
Is it a Google document?
It is in Google Docs.
Which SharePoint drive is it on?
It should be on ours. Let me drop it in the chat real quick.
If it's Google.
Let me
Because
send it.
Joey gave me a Google document, but I didn't know where it lives. I just have the link.
Okay. So there's that one. And I think it is, let me just backtrack and find the folder that it was in. Give me 1 second. But if everyone else wants to sign up, I'm not, go for it. That's not the way I don't work with words spoken.
I think for this month, I would advise, just because this is Flow's first month, we sign up now. If we want to propose different processes moving forward, we can do that over email. But for ease, and so she can have the names written down now, let's do that. Also, for people who are not then, learning via hearing, which is totally fair, or would like that content circulated, Gianna, if you don't mind sending out a list of each of these cases and who is on the case review for this set, that would be really helpful. And Hadassah, maybe that would help you to digest and also find this document. And we can use that going forward. But for now, I think for ease sake this month, and just to get Flow started on a good foot, let's just sign up now, please.
Great.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
So 005, serious misconduct.
Yeah, I would like to review that one.
Same here.
Who is the second one?
Ariel. Also, Gianna, sorry, before we keep going too, we have to make sure to, I'm going to add Taisha to that case. She had sent an email today. She's not here, but she is willing to, she wanted us to volunteer for her on her behalf. So I'm going to just volunteer Taisha for that one. So that one is now staffed. And then Sarah, Daniel, should we just assign Sarah too, or should we ask her in an email? Taisha, 'cause
I think once all of us have made our preferences, then we can, we can slot Sarah in.
Okay, so I have 3 people for that case. Okay, then the next case, the only other case you voted on, yes, was 022.
Chico and Ariel. Do we have one more person for that one? Hadassah, thank you.
Okay, and can I just go back to the one I emailed about?
Yes, please. Thank you.
I know you might not have that. Oh, Victor. Okay.
Victor, thanks, Victor.
This is Gianna, this is a case ending. It's ending 021, M1 2022-021. I got one.
And I think we can put Sarah on that one too then.
Okay. Thank you.
And Flo, something Joy might have told you, our expectations is that each panel member needs to do at least one review each month. And so that was something Joey would just help us with if we missed a month or something. Because also it just, as it would turn out, there was an instance I think where Martha did like 4 in a month. and so in those instances too, of just keeping us all abreast of, if how many cases we're doing and making sure we're hitting those expectations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are all non-panelists active at the moment, aside from the 6 here present?
Sorry, Flo, can you say that again?
I gather all the three absent panelists are also quite active in reviewing cases.
Yes, correct. And it's
Okay.
2 absent panelists. So we're a panel of 8 right now.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
You mean Jen Livovich is not on the panel anymore?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
But she's still on the website.
Oh, not correct. Thank you, Amy. I see you.
Okay, I was wondering what happened to that person. Okay.
Yeah. Who left in good, she was disappointed to leave. For the public record, Jen was eager to serve, but was pulled away to serve elsewhere in our community. So yeah. Any panelists, any other? Yeah, Amy, go for it.
While we're on the topic of website, so we will take that down. But we're also going to be posting the recordings to the website too. So community members don't have to reach out to Flo for the link and all that business. We're going to make that a practice. So I'm hoping to start that this week. Today's Thursday. It could happen at the beginning of next week.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Amy. Just as a panel, so if we miss them too, like that's such a relief to be able to just watch the meeting.
Totally.
Yeah. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Panelists, any other thoughts, concerns, questions, dreams? Thank you all. This was a marathon of a meeting. Thank you so much. As usual, thank you for being here. I know it's the world. I swear it's not. Each time I say it, it gets a little bit worse. I feel like I know it's hard to be here, and I really appreciate you for your time, your presence, your feedback, and your work for our community. I know the next few months are going to be a wild ride for us, but I hope you are looking ahead to our new panelists with as much hope as I am, because I just having glanced at some of these applicants, there's some extraordinary people who are ready to join us, and you all, of course, are extraordinary people who get to lead them in this work. And anyway, I just think the world of you. Y'all are awesome. Thank you. And if that's all, then we can go ahead and close, and I'll head to bed, get a drink.
I'm
walk
so
the dog.
sorry to ruin that because
Oh,
we
no.
would love for Flo, Amy, Mike, if you don't mind staying online after. We just want to coordinate the co-chairs meeting with you so we don't forget to do that either. So just quickly. But everyone else, go get that drink.
Yeah. Have a good night, y'all, and we'll see you soon.
Everyone,
Take care, everyone.